Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It's Thursday, October 5th. What a heat yesterday. 90 degrees. This is crazy. At least today is not going to be the mid 70s, and then this weekend we're going to get down to normal fall temperatures, which then we'll be freezing our asses off. And I'll be complaining about the cold with you instead of the heat. So yesterday I ended up scoring a little bit. When I say scoring, but the thing I wanted to talk about is you probably do it more as you get older, but it's called use it or lose it. And I was like a mini hoarder, but it was good stuff. It wasn't garbage and stuff. But I hated to get rid of anything. And call it what you may. I mean, I had at one point 19 tractors. Who needs 19 tractors? And that was before I went to farming it. Back to doing my own hay. I just had them because I liked them. I was collecting them. And they'd stay in a building all winter. In the spring, I bring them out one by one, take time to start each one of them, ride around a little bit, put them back in the building, shut them off. There they be again for another year. Period. Boats. I have boats up the yin yang. My pride and joy was my bass tracker. It had a 75 horse Merc on it. But I didn't get it out at all last year. And the year before, one time. Because I actually had the newer, it was it the tracker? That one had the 50 horse on it, sorry. And then this one here was, oh gosh. But it was a 17-foot runabout with an outboard set up for fishing, mainly walleye. And then I had a couple smaller boats kicking around, canoes. And the same deal. I'm tripping over the stuff. I mean, everybody is, envious that I have it, but why do you need it and why do you have it if you're not going to take the time to use it? Period. But I think it's an age thing because it was like I'm at the age of, I need to find things that I enjoy doing and start doing them. I'm on that end of the life cycle, not this end. So I think that might be more inclined to be like that. But I'm not a spendthrift. I bought a lot of stuff as investments. People come over and need money and ask about buying it. And so gradually over the past 4 or 5 years, I've been selling off and getting rid of stuff that I didn't use. It was taking up space in my garage, in my lean-to off my garage, in my 24 by 60 foot lean-to up above. Everything was packed. No room. I first started off by having an auction. And I'll tell you, the thing is, it's like flipping a quarter. Sometimes the auctions go high, and other times they just don't bring. So, but the best time to have an auction is when you got a bunch of garbage too that you want just gone. And usually by the end of the auction, the following day, everything is cleaned up. So like if you were an estate sale or something like that, where you're going to sell off your parents or your grandparents' stuff and you just don't want to deal with people, have an auction house do it. They'll clean her out. Take out what you want, what's sentimental, rest of it, shoot her down the road, put the house up for sale. Easy peasy. So the auction that I had was, it cleaned up a lot of stuff, the smalls that were in the way. And the bigger stuff, it brought not as much as probably it should have been worth, but close enough. That I'm committed. I feel like if when I go to an auction, if I find out half the crap there has got reserves on it, I'll turn around and go home. You know, you're not having an appraisal done. You're having an auction done, right? So from that point, I said, that didn't go too super hot, I could get that or quite a bit more by independent sales. So I use Facebook a lot to start selling some of my wares. And that was the remaining tractors. I was still flipping tractors too. I still am, buying and selling tractors and what have you. But you need to prioritize. If you're looking for a few extra bucks to put back into the business because you want to see growth, look at the use it or lose it rule. And if you haven't used it in the last year, and it's something that's got value that you can trade for money to help push your growth, isn't that a good thing? For me, I didn't want growth. I don't want growth. I downsized as I got a little older because I wanted more time. I didn't want to feel like I was running that little hamster wheel. I wanted to get off. And my kids were telling me, Dad, you need to slow down. You need to enjoy life. You're missing out on a lot. When are you going to stop? And I used to work for this guy. He was a farmer. And tell you how much I made. I made $50 a week. I worked 6 days a week from 5:30 in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. And that's what I got paid. And at the time, my rent was $150 a month. So we had a week to cover groceries and gas. Many a times I walked to work, just we didn't have the money for gas. But she told me, she said, the only way to live is to live until they put you in that hole. The worst thing you can do is stop. See, because a lot of people that I know that either started retirement or worse off, they get diagnosed with cancer, they stop living. They stop doing things. You talk to these people, at least I did when I was younger, that were in their 60s that I worked with. That's all they could talk about was getting to 65 so they could retire 62 or 65. Most of them are going 65 so they could get their full retirement. But that's all they talked about was all these things they were going to be doing. All this time they were going to have to do, traveling, this and that. If I can give you guys the best advice, is to enjoy the journey along the way and do the things you think you want to do when you retire now. Because you may not make it to retirement, for one, or may not be physically in the best of shape to do what you think you want to do. Now, I'm turning 61 this month. There's things that I can't do that I was doing when I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and even my early 50s. This whole body just don't, I got to use this more and less of this. For my son, he's turning 41, he's more brawn still, he's a great help. But to take and do the things that you want to do now. Take a week's vacation and travel and see if that's your bag. Don't put off doing what you can today to tomorrow, because tomorrow may never come. So that's what my idea was, well, I don't need all this crapola, and I might better invest it into something else, that maybe I would like to do. And as I was selling stuff, I was adding more beef cows on. I take the money and invest it into mama cows or a bull if it was that year. I got Harry last year, and he's half Wagyu and half Angus. And he'll be good for this year as well. But coming by next spring, I got to have him banded or out, because he's got 2 daughters in there. At least I think it's his 2 daughters from this past batch. So I started putting the money, the boats and all that stuff, the extra tractors. I started buying haying equipment, better haying equipment, beef cows, something that was still an asset. See, I'm just changing one asset to another asset at my age, where you could be taking one asset and turning it into something you need for growth. Because at my age, assets are more important to me than ever. Now, some of you have big 401ks. Some of you have, CDs, what have you. Those are assets. Those are tangible. And they're there for your later years, or should be. Being self-employed, I don't have a 401k. I don't have money in CDs and Rosses and all that, because they just aren't giving me much of a return. And before I play the stock market and put money on a company to see whether they're going to make it or not, I'd rather put it on myself. That way, if it doesn't work out, the only one I can blame is myself. Right? See, that's the difference of people that are self-employed versus someone that is working, a normal job employed by somebody else. Is that most people that are self-employed do not have 401ks. Nope. And the goal is to get the business up to be a big enough asset that you can sell, trade, what have you, for another asset in your elder years, so that you live comfortably. But, it's like the video I did a couple months back, on the demise of the small engine, businesses. To no fault of their own, other than not reacting quick enough, a lot of the older shops lost value. That's where most of those old timers, and there's still some going today, that's where their assets was in the business. They could sell the business name, they could sell the inventory, they could sell the real estate, or they could put it all together in one package and have the new owners, and a lot of times it was somebody already working for them, take over and make monthly payments to them so that it would supplement their Social Security. That's an asset. Well, now they go look and they've got this huge parts supply that's worthless. And when I say worthless, that people can go online and buy it for sometimes a fifth of what these guys have got invested in the parts, in their parts area. And when it comes to equipment and floor planning, even if the person has paid off most of the equipment that's sitting on the floor they're still brand new, there's no guarantee that the new owner would be able to sell them. And then lastly, the only thing going so far has been real estate. And I started buying real estate years ago. When I say years ago, in my 20s. Had an old timer tell me, it's one thing they can't do is make more land available. Unless you're in Dubai and they just bring sand in and build on the sand. But at some point, real estate has, some of the properties that I bought back in my 20s are worth 4 and 5 times what I paid for it. But the other thing you have to look at is I'm paying every year school taxes on it, land taxes on it, even though I own it free and clear. So you never own something free and clear. So if you figure up those year-end taxes on those properties, you need it to be worth a lot more. But the guy that's still in business right now and is looking to get out, and he's old school, if he or she decides to have an auction, I can tell you right now, they're going to come into the business, an auctioneering company, and they're not going to sell part by part. They're going to put a bunch of parts into a box, and they're going to sell them in box lots. And you're not going to realize 10 cents on the dollar of what you have invested in it. I already know it. Because you got to have buyers out there that are willing to invest into that old new stock. And if that person can go online and get it cheaper, and most of the shops already know that if they were to give this old timer fair market value on the parts that he has, he would be sitting on it a long time. And that's basically what I'm doing. Is I have a lot of brand new OEM parts, and I say half of them are new old stock now. But I know if I had an auction today, that's what they would do. They would come in and they would just start boxing up stuff and pumping it out. But by continuing the parts business online, I'm selling 8 to 10 stuff a week that I'm not reordering, that are new old stock. And I'm realizing the prices of a carburetor for $60 some is selling for $19 because the guy wants OEM. So if you have the time to stick it out and just not reorder and just thin down what you have in inventory, and you have the time to get it listed and sold, then I would encourage you to do it that way. Better yet, have your grandson or granddaughter get online, set you up an account with eBay and Amazon, and sell it. But you have to sell it with the idea that you're probably not going to get your money's back. And I like to look at completed sales, what it's sold for, the OEM, and then price it like that. Because I'm gradually winding down the parts business. It's to just the fast moving stuff that I encourage you guys to invest in, right? But the old timer's got his asset now is in the building. If he's got a good location and another business wants to buy it, or if it's zoned commercial residential and somebody wants to take the building, convert it into a residence, what have you. And a lot of times in our area, what I've been seeing is buyers coming from outside the area, buying a home and having it totally demolished and putting a new home on that piece of property. Yeah. Especially on the lakes, we're seeing a lot of that. But your main goal from when you start your business until when you're up in the years like I am is to be gaining assets and being smart about how you're keeping those assets so that it's not actually running backwards on you where you're losing money every year on it. If you're losing money on it every year, you need to get rid of it. I'm telling you right now. So if you're looking for a way to help with growth for your business or you're downsizing, use it or lose it helps a lot. You start looking through your stuff. What is the stuff you have that you don't no longer use, or you don't use it enough to warrant having it? But that's one of the things that I see today with the kids, especially my son. He hasn't got any assets. He pays rent, and when you pay rent, and nobody wants the old stuff. They want all new, throw away, go get new. But if you learn anything from this video, is do the things that you want to do now instead of waiting until you're too old. And the score I got, I end up getting a 14-foot deep V on a trailer and a 9.8 Nissan. I thought it was pull start. It was both. This pull start and electric start. And I got it for $1,000. Just what I wanted. So on that note, you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning.